Hello and welcome back to another episode of Supercoach Insider. My name is Ben,
And I'm Chris.
I'm Swizz.
and thank you for joining us. This is the team by team analysis series. Some people go everywhere around the world looking for the ninth wonder of the world, but ladies and gentlemen, I can bring you the ninth team in AFL. That's a Carlton Blues, and there was nothing more Blues than the finish to last year. But almost call it like a Chris. They go out, they get all dressed up, they're high as life, they're hitting everything coming out of the ballpark, and then next minute 2 a.m. walks by and they get kicked out of the club at the last.
Nothing good happens after two.
Nothing does. Ed Sheeran
Nothing,
talks about that.
nothing good. Before we move on, SC Insider 100, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. All the Supercoach platforms as well, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, you name it, and on the YouTube, Chris.
Yeah, to search for a Supercoach Insider. And might I say, it was mighty fine being the team responsible to knock them out of the finals. It was a very high, it was the biggest highlight of my year because not only did we make top four, but I just got to see the life drain from my friend's eyes. So I apologize. And that'll be enough Carlton slander that we'll have for the whole day. Though I did actually, I have to say this. No, one more. I was chatting to Damien, who's a really good mate of mine, really passionate Carlton supporter, and he said, look, I don't want to go too far, but I think that we can achieve top four this year. And I said, well, hold up, because you're still playing Collingwood twice. So there's two guaranteed L's right there. But, I digress.
But Melbourne and Melbourne and Collingwood, those last two rounds were very, very, very good to watch. A game that I would actually
Great
go back
football
and
games.
watch. Yeah, I'd go back and watch those again any day. So yeah, that's pretty much where we're at there. Also brought to you by splashvodka.com.au, continuing that lovely sponsorship and partnership through them. So we'll be keen to bring you some new flavors, new adventures with them throughout this season as well. Swizz, you're going to take us off and talk about all things Carlton.
Yeah, why not? I've got my Parkfield shirt on, which looks like a Carlton shirt. So, I mean, in the theme for it. All right. So, as we know, they finished ninth, 12 wins, 10 losses, percentage of 103.8. I was one of those people who was pretty bullish on them last year, thinking they might challenge the top four. And it was all about, Voss and the ins and they'd brought in. They started the year fantastic. They finally beat us for about the first time in about 15 years. So, that was the first hoodoo they got off. And that first half of the season, they had some important wins. I know, obviously knocking off the Dogs, the Swannies at home. So things were tracking really nicely for them. And then, unfortunately for the Blues, they got in a bit of mid-season slump. As you said, lost to the Pies twice, lost to the Tigers, and then just didn't happen for them. So, going on that first half of the year, you were thinking, no, Voss's magic here. What's the possibilities? Can they get in that sort of fifth, sixth range home final, and and maybe cause some damage? But yeah, unfortunately, it just didn't happen for them. I think the couple of the big other things is how do they improve? We all talk about where they're going to go. We all expect them to keep advancing forward. But they had the Brownlow medalist, they had the Coleman medalist, so we
How
know
do they improve?
those guys can't get any better. They've had the Mackay, who also has won a Coleman medal. So a lot of their best players are at peaking. George Hewitt came in and had his best season, and obviously he's struggling with a bit of injury at the moment, and same with Walshy. But Walsh has got some upside when he can get his body fit. But a lot of their peak players, Doherty, nearly career years, if not career years. So we do think they're going to naturally improve, and it's going to happen for them 1 year. But it's very reliant on players sort of 10 to 22 on their list, because the top end are doing everything right.
I think the top end was dragging them through.
Exactly.
And then there was a lot of people letting them down in those roles, and then the injuries kind of left, if you're fit, your role, you fit into a system perfectly. All of a sudden you get injured, and then someone else is coming in trying to fit that role perfectly, and it's just not working out. So,
Well, I mean, like straight off the bat, Jacob Wiedering is their most important player, I think, by an absolute mile. And that was testament to the fact that when he was out, they just crumbled. That in game, I saw it firsthand. They were killing us. Couldn't get anything past Wiedering. He was absolutely taking the piss. He gets injured, the whole game flips on its head, and we win the game. Like yeah, he's by far their most important player. And
And
unfortunately,
he dropped like 20 Supercoach points too this year compared to the year before.
Yeah,
yeah,
but he played, but it's more that role he was playing, and that like it's
yes,
just a defensive piece. Well, I've had this discussion with people. If you're, let's just say you're doing a draft, full on starting the AFL again, and you had pick one, and you could pick any player of that. Now, it's always subjective, but if you were say it's only a one, let's say it's just a 1 year season, and that Wiedering's gone in my top 5 picks. That because I just think how he is the best defensive player in the league, and that what he did, what I think people kind of undervalue how good he is, because
yeah,
when he's not there for Carlton, and that they're a completely different team.
I can tell
Well,
you who he's better than.
everyone.
Shaggy pick 2.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like, and he's also a good user. I mean, like he doesn't have a bad trait. He's a good user. He can intercept the ball. He's very good defensively. He's very good one-on-one. Like, yeah,
Good bloke.
you can keep going. Yeah. So having him out, but then not having an ability to cover him through any other means, really. Like they have Mitch McGovern, who obviously was playing that interceptor role. He could have filled in there, but again, he was injured. They just kept having injury upon injury and trying to fill these holes in that defensive line that were just never able to be filled. So they ended up bringing in that Sam Durden from that mid-season selection, and then he got injured
yeah.
before.
And that's my next point on this. It was like, how do they cover their injuries, and that they just
Yeah.
don't have the depth of other teams in. So let's have a look at their ins and outs. So they've traded in Blake Acres, so they help that wing role. And he's been a very serviceable player for Fremantle for a while, and we'll get into more about him later. And their draft picks was Oliver Hollins, number 11. We got Lockie Cowan, number 30, Jackson Binns at 32, and Harry Lemmy at 47. Out the door, they delisted Will Hayes, Oscar McDonald, Jackie Nunes, Parks. Will Setterfield was traded off to Essendon. Liam Stocker, Tommy Williams, both delisted, and Liam Jones, free agent to the Bulldogs.
Did you just say? Did you just hear the goat? Was that
goat.
the one that
The
traded
goat.
out?
Yeah, the goat.
There's
There's two goats there. Someone say
Setterfield.
Liam Jones,
I was
someone
thinking
say
about
Will Setterfield.
Stoker. Delisted, picked up by was that Essendon? No, Saints.
Who?
Saints, yeah, no,
Saints.
yes, Setterfield. Yeah, I actually, I don't mind. I know that he completely played out of position the entire time he's played there at Carlton, because they just don't have. You got Patrick Cripps in there. You can't have Patrick Cripps and Will Setterfield in the same midfield. That just does not make any sense. You'd be mad to do that. But I actually don't mind Setterfield at the Bombers, but we'll see how that goes. And on that podcast, we'll jump into that.
Carlton have a lot of people being rumored to be getting. I don't know if it's just trialing or to try and get a different mix up in their midfield, but I've heard of at least 3 or 4 players that are then getting some rotations in the midfield. And you mentioned Akers before as a winger, but even then they were saying like he's been doing some work inside as well, unless they're trying to cover their bases in case someone gets injured. But then you have Hollands, who you mentioned as obviously is definitely an outside kind of player, so maybe he goes on the wing. But I've heard Williams, I've heard Doherty, I've heard Akers getting some midfield practice.
I think that they do need. The Doherty is the one, right? They need an X factor through the midfield, because they do have extractors. They've got good users, but they don't really have that flash through there, that striker type player. They've tried obviously Crouch. I mean, Cripps, don't get me wrong. Yeah, like they tried as Williams in there for about 3 games and went, no, you're actually a halfback. Sorry, I don't know. Sorry, we're paying you $800,000 to play halfback. Cripps is obviously the X factor player, but he doesn't have the speed to be able to cause issues out of a stoppage. He has the strength and the power, and
he tries to push everyone out of the way. He barges him. He can't run past them. He just kind of tries to go through them. Right.
Get out of my way.
And then gets done holding the ball and loses $50.
I think that's because we know Walsh is going to miss with that back surgery the first few weeks.
Right. Exactly.
So they're looking at
Hewitt's still coming back,
and then Hewitt's still coming back from a back injury.
Yeah.
Hewitt's back in the thick of it now, boys.
Exactly, and those early games now where they'd be hoping again to get off to that flyer. They're missing 2 of their better midfielders. Puts a lot of pressure on Cripps again. So they did the 2 kids that in particular we should just mention. So Ollie Hollins is that midfielder, the 183 centimetre from the Murray Bushrangers, elite runner. is was also used out at halfback too. So he's a good ball user there. But they obviously do see him as a midfielder coming forward. He is the brother of Elijah Hollins. So I think he's definitely one to be watching early. I think we talk about that 22nd, 23rd person and that, but I definitely think he'll have a role to start off with. Lockie Cowan is the Tasmanian boy, 187 centimetres. More that slingshot rebounding defender. Really good weapon with his foot, so he's kicking. So we know they've brought in Newman and Zach Williams over the last few years, but I think maybe this is the kid, now that they've got him as well, is why they think they can release Doherty into the midfield, especially early on. So it would not surprise me if Lockie Cowan's the one that lines up round one and potentially plays those first few games until they start getting their midfield back.
Interesting. This is an important question, guys. Is any of those guys better than Paddy Dow? Because I don't know. Is that experiment done? Are they done with that finally? Or they still want me to shred the crap out of Paddy Dow?
It's funny because I used to get so upset about Shaki, and then now I'm like, I can't be that upset. I mean, a third club has wanted Shaki.
It's that classic rule, like you're tall, so you get away with it. Yeah, exactly.
So their draw, so they play twice as Collingwood, so you'll be happy with that one, Chrissy boy.
Yeah.
They've also got the Giants, so Gold Coast, Melbourne, St Kilda, and West Coast. So it's pretty friendly for them.
3-3.
Giants, Giants, St Kilda, Gold Coast, and West Coast. You'd think the Giants and West Coast, they probably take all 4 points, all 4 games there, and then Gold Coast and Saints, if they can get the better of those.
That's the sort of draw that guarantees them top 6, right? Like they should.
There's no excuse.
They should be in that mix of that 5 or 6 that is battling for top 4. And look, I joke about Carlton, and obviously we do, but their list is good enough to do it if they can get a good run with injuries. They arguably have one of the best lists in the comp. Like their best 22 is probably the best 22.
Their top 10 is as good as anyone.
Who are they kicking out of the 8?
Oh, I wouldn't even have to have a look at last year's 8. I only remember that there was one team in the top 4 last year.
There was one. There was definitely one by memory, which I was like,
Doggies slipped in.
No, but I think the Doggies are better this year.
Yeah.
I think they're much better.
Are they? Oh, yeah. They look better from a structure point of view.
Structurally, I think they're much better.
That's a hard thing because you look at that 8 naturally and go, okay, who does come out? Because obviously Richmond and Brisbane have improved.
Probably Freo. I think Freo go down.
Freo could be the one. The natural progression, everyone said, is Freo keeps going, but they've lost actually
probably
a lot of
Pies.
Freo's. I think Freo have lost a lot of good players from that 12 to 25 group. Your Griffin Logues and your Tuckers and that, and Akers, who have definitely played roles for them, which is going to be hard for them to feel. Collingwood, and I even think the Swans regress this year. Now, I don't think
I personally think the Swans and the Magpies had a fantastic year, but I'm not entirely sure they can back it up.
Yeah,
they might be
more specifically 7-8. The Pies than Swans. To be fair, I mean, Pies got top 4 with the percentage of 104, which I'm sure would have to have been one of the lowest percentages for a top 4 team.
You'd have to. I feel like you have to go back to Fitzroy in 1916.
Yeah, right.
That's pretty well where that's at.
And now you have a harder draw as well, so you kind of hoping to hold on to a top 8.
Trust me, man. I've looked at the first 4 games, and I'm like, we could be 0-5 going into the season. Like it's rough for Collingwood in the first month. So
anyway, we'll get onto you next, buddy podcast. There.
What I like to do is I just like to sprinkle a little bit of Collingwood every
I know, Dacos and Brisbane podcast.
I'm like Salt Bay over here.
So their first 4 is interesting. So they've got Richmond, which I think we probably beat them this year, just with their injuries, but we always leak points. So from a Supercoach point of view, it's still Carlton. But then they've got the Cats and then the Giants and North Melbourne. So at minimum, they've got to be 2-2. But their last 3 is interesting. So they've got the D's, but then they play the Suns and Giants away. So unlike the last year where they had the D's and Pies, they've got 2 games where you'd be backing them to win. So that I don't see where the excuse comes from them this year. I've got a mate, Toddy, who's a massive Carlton member, and he'll be hating the fact that I'm already jinxing them already.
Jeez. So if Walsh isn't back until say round 5, hypothetically,
Mhm.
that round 3 and 4 could be huge for Cripps.
Huge. Yeah, like
Huge.
I've got Cripps on my team at the minute.
The
Ooh,
word is he hasn't missed a beat either, which is
Yeah,
kind of hard to ignore.
he's
I suppose does that
still
lead into our
still came
premiums?
out for Cripps. So
Yeah.
I do need to get around to doing my team round.
Yeah,
road
we
to
wouldn't
round
know,
one, and I will
Swizz,
be
because you
today.
got to do your round
I
one.
need to do
Your
that.
road to round one.
Oh,
Road to
yeah.
round
By
one.
the,
Yeah, no
for
one has
those
any
listening
idea.
at home, we do a series called Road to Round One where we all like talk about our teams, except for Swizz because he's special. So
Mate, I was in Tassie last week and I've been busy with other things. So, you know,
I'm winning Sports Person of the Year
sports
and all that.
person of the year, you know. It's,
Being on
it's
video,
a-
getting interviewed.
yeah, it's a
Let's
lot of
move
stuff.
into it though.
Well, let's go to the
Patrick
premiums, mate. I've got
Patrick
well,
Cripps,
well, I
611,000.
was actually going to start off with Hewitt just because he was the most, but
You can't start off with
I'm
Hewitt
only
because we
starting
just
off
spoke
with
about
him
Cripps.
just quickly because just to let people know he's still coming back from a back injury, and that one to watch maybe come second half of the year, and that you'd hope that he drops cash. But obviously Hewitt had a massive year and fits their structure, so he's one of those ones. But the problem with the Blues, I think they've got the last buy, so it's going to always be hard to bring players in like that. So yeah, him, and then Walshy's the other one. Just scrap off your list now. Unfortunately, as good as he is, maybe it becomes an upgrade version. Possibly
I don't
Swizz,
think
later on.
Walsh misses that much football.
I think he misses 5 to 6.
Nah, so
I know he's running.
last year he was he's already running. Last year he was tipped to miss
is he
like
back
4
running?
or 5 rounds,
Yeah,
and he
yeah.
came back like
He's
round 2.
True.
Okay.
like
Now I don't want to
But
correct
he's
you
just a
guys
quick
here.
healer.
But the risk factor with him too, because he's been in.
I agree with you. Trust me, I 100% agree with you. I don't think they should play him until round 5 or 6 or whatever. But
you know what they'll do? They'll lose their
how do you
first
hold him
two.
out?
They'll lose the first 2 and bring him in round 3, and they'll play Russian roulette there.
See, the issue is, Swizz, is that in no realm is Hewitt averaging more than Cripps for 2022, which is why I started with Patrick Cripps.
But he did last year, didn't he?
No, he
He
didn't.
did
Chris.
actually
Did he?
by
Did he, Chris?
0.3. I believe I won a $50 bet with that one as well.
Yeah, you're trying to skip
Ben,
that one, mate. But
you tell me what happened there, buddy, because I've got Alzheimer's.
Cripps should have kicked the ball into the forward 50, instead tried to palm somebody off, and then got done holding the ball and cost me the win. So yeah,
he turned in for 5 seconds of the year. He turned into peak Paddy Dow, and got caught holding.
That was
the ball.
all I needed. All I needed to beat you. And then Patrick Cripps averages less than Hewitt.
Yeah, it's funny that they all averaged the exact same. They all averaged 111. Hewitt, Cripps,
pretty much, yeah.
And that, so they're interesting.
But Cripps is the one, right? Because
Cripps
he could have a hot start, right?
The hot start and the injury factors to their other midfielder. So it's him, that single doing it all by himself again.
Who wants to pay $600K? It's sort of like buyer's remorse, right? Like, so last year we got Cripps for $450K.
Sicily too. Sicily, same boat.
Right? So now I look at Sicily and I go, $620K. But he averaged you like 114. Oh, but it's $620K.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I got Sicily for 450,000 or whatever it was last year, and Cripps for 450,000 last year.
It could still be unders for Cripps.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, because last year he had that Gold Coast game where I traded him out and then watched him go like 140 the next 2 weeks after he came back, which was really painful. But yeah, he had that 38 quarter time injury. He's still on 38 quarter time, that injury. And then there was that other run where, like, I think the Richmond game where he got like a 79 and just had a really off month in the middle there. But outside of that, like, he still averaged 111. Like, for a guy that's just won the Brownlow, there's still meat there. There's potential value.
On top of that, people used to question the durability. He's also played 95% of the last 3 years. So he hasn't missed much at all. And Walsh as well.
He gets banged up, but he rolls out there with 17 bandages on and half a tape of strapping, but whatever.
Keeps doing
He's just Juddied 2.0 with that. It's like, just tape back up and get him back out there.
And exactly Walsh as well's only missed 3.3% of the last 3 years. So if he's back, I'd quite like a Walsh at a discount, to be honest.
That's my argument, Cripps versus Steele at the moment for that position. Like, somebody else may put their hand. It depends on how I end up with, like, my fall-on structure. But yeah, you look at that. Yeah, we talk about Richmond, Geelong, Richmond League points, but then they go the Giants, North Melbourne, Adelaide, St Kilda, West Coast. If Cripps is doing that as a lone hand, or even if it's just him and Walsh, with Hewitt's out, depending on how Hewitt's going as well. Cripps could just go massive in that period.
My argument against Cripps, because I have to have an argument because I don't want him to go big and I don't want people to own him, is purely that last buy is actually real hard. It's a hard buy to navigate, not necessarily in midfield, but in the forward line. Basically, most of the premium forwards that you want to select outside Dunkley.
Thank God Dunkley's a Brisbane player now too, because otherwise it would be really hard.
Yeah, it'd be even harder, right? But even Bont has that same buy as well. So you're really loading up on back end buy players. Now, sometimes that can work depending on how you've structured your team and what it looks like by the time you hit the buys. If you traded aggressively into other buy players.
My argument there, straight off, Chris, is I'm expecting like this year players to pick up dual position, and it might not need to rely on the players that have that buy in that forward line.
Yeah, I had a look at dual position players as in a big way, because I was structuring my team heavily regarding allowance for dual position players to be in my team round 6, round 12. What I've come back to the realization is that it's very unlikely, in fact, highly unlikely, it's very rare to happen, that those kind of players average enough points to be considered top 6, top 10 in NAV lines. We got absolutely blessed with Bailey Smith and Bont in round 12, and then we had Luke Parker earlier because there was an injury to Papley, and so he played forward. Those sort of picks, they don't come out of thin air. Now, I'm not saying that there won't be any of those picks, but
it's usually one or two.
Yeah, but there'll probably be one or two, and that's all I'm needing to balance that out.
But Dunkley from those dogs, right? So I don't think Bailey Smith gets forward mid status now because he's going to be playing basically pure wing. Bont's not going to play enough forward there. So who are these guys that are going to make such an impact on the forward line to average 100 plus?
Max Gawn?
Rucks, right? So now we're talking different kettle of fish. Do you think there's a world that Max Gawn is going to average 110 plus playing 35% forward or 35% defender?
No, but I still think he can go 100, which is good enough for the forward line.
Is it?
Yes.
I don't know, man. Is it enough to change your entire structure to get a guy that
I think the forward line outside of Dunkley and potentially, say, Cogs and Taranto they're all around the same mark there. And I think if you're talking 2-3 points on that, some of these couple of rucks.
That's what I mean. So why change my structure around 2 or 3 points? I'm literally modifying my entire team around structure of reliance on maybe some DPPs.
But if I'm thinking Cripps is going to go better than the midfield option that I'm going to bring in, it's rob Peter, pay Paul, but I think I'm actually ahead with doing it that way.
And that, look, it may work that way. Yeah. I suppose I've gone to
it's a good
I've
argument,
come to the realization that I think structuring your team to make room for that may not. I don't think that's a normal thing. I don't think what happened last year where we had Libba, Bont, Bailey Smith, Luke Parker all be top 6 forwards. I don't think that's a norm, but we've got sort of conditioned to it because the first time we had it. Like in fantasy, that's not a thing.
Yeah.
Again,
but I'm not thinking it's going to be that.
The year before
I don't think it's going to be that many as
Josh
well.
Kelly,
but I still think there will still be at least one in there. And the other fact that we haven't taken in, like I'm big on Darcy Cameron. I don't see him as my R2. I see him as my forward. So by then, that's another forward I'm picking. I'm moving around just because how I'm structuring my team.
I love talking Collingwood players in the Carlton.
But we will get onto that. So let's get on. So Paddy Cripps, we know the one I'm really keen on is Doherty, just because all the rumours about him playing midfield.
Are you on him?
I have him at the moment. I took Stewart out to put Doherty in.
I love it. Look,
and you know what I want?
For 2 years running,
I kind of want out either Yo or Himmelberg, and I want all three. I want Dawson, Stewart, and Doherty, because I think I will want all three anyway. And that, but it's the question of which one I think. The reason it's more, I think Doherty. It's the argument of going, do you go the guy who you know how much he's going to be? I don't think Doherty's price changes too much. Or do you go somebody who's Stewart, who always puts in one of those low games and there's potential to pick him up cheaper, but then there's also potential to miss him because he goes massive. And that's where I'm
See,
sort of debating between Stewart and Doherty at the moment.
Doherty and Cripps both have close to 40%. So 4 out of 10 games, or close to that, under 100. But they both have, like Cripps has 7 scores over 125 and 2 scores over 150. Doherty has 6 scores over 125. So sometimes they miss the mark, 4 out of 10 times.
Yeah, but
But then their ceiling can help factor them in.
Doherty
So it
doesn't
depends. Is he going big? If Doherty starts
Doherty
knocking out,
doesn't put the real low games in. Like, yeah, okay, he goes under 100, but he doesn't go like he's not going under 80.
He's usually like I think his lows are like 85-ish.
Yeah, that's right.
he goes under 80 13.6% of the time.
Yeah, so that's the whole
Not too
thing.
bad.
So he's going 85 for his bad game, and then he comes in and gets a 125. So his price isn't really fluctuating as much that I'm
He's
going.
600K. I think he'll still get down to about 550.
I think he gets to 550, but it's
I think all those defend. I mean, I'm not really.
Yeah, they all get to 550.
I think all of them at some point go, but they definitely go below 600.
Yeah,
but
are
you? The problem with all of that talk is like you've got to pick them up that week.
Yeah,
what like right. the week you don't pick them up is the week they go 170, a la
like Stewart
Tom Stewart last year.
Yeah,
like I'm stupid with it.
And if Hewitt and Walsh look like coming back earlier, then it's probably a different story. But at the moment, Doherty seems to be the answer to their midfield. And with that fixture early on, that I feel like I want to start him if he's in that role, because he might start on an absolute heater.
See, I think he's the worst midfielder in the mix. I think he's the worst midfielder at Carlton.
No, he's not.
Oh, sorry, outside of Down, the rest of it. But you put Hewitt, Cripps, Walsh,
yeah, but
a lot of other people there. Then
no, but once Hewitt and Walsh come back, he's going back to his back line.
Well, Hewitt's back in the full thick of it. He's back in full training. If Walsh misses 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds, what's Doherty going to average over that many rounds? Because we all know that Chera's going to be picking up a little bit of slack as well. I just think everyone says midfield role, and everyone's like, oh yeah, I'm going to jump on Doherty, and then I just think you might be a little bit upset.
But he's still awesome as a defender as well. For that, but it's more. I don't like Doherty if the midfield role is he's playing there with Walsh and Hewitt. It's the fact that he's playing. If Walsh and Hewitt look like they're still out, and this is all where it depends. That's why Doherty's in there at the moment, because as it stands right now, Hewitt and Walsh aren't playing round 1. But if for whatever reason that changes and it looks like they're back earlier and then I just make the swap back to Stewart. But for now, if I think Doherty's playing as their number 2 midfielder,
what do you think though? That do you think that there's a value in his price? That's the question that I've been asking myself. At 600K, is there value in it?
I don't think there's value, but I think there's potential early points that I don't want to miss out. Where Stewart doesn't have that.
You think that he probably still averages 110?
Yeah, I think he's
for the year.
Yeah, where Stewart, but I think he starts that year on fire, like maybe the 115, 120, where Stewart has the games. He doesn't have the Geelong games early on. So as much as he averages well at the G.
But he does play at the G.
He does play well at the G, but he doesn't have it's like G away, Geelong like round 6 or 7 or something like that.
I think this is an important conversation, because I think that a lot of people are under this like exact same scenario. Like, do I go Doherty? Do I go Stewart?
Yeah.
Like, what are the pros and cons of both? It's probably good for a TikTok segment.
It is. It is. It's because we could argue this all day, and I think we're going to get more information as the season gets closer.
Well, I'll tell you something for nothing. Right now, I can't decide, and so therefore my D1 is Harry Himmelberg. So
I just keep one in there because I know it's going to be one or the other. I want one of them. I just don't know which one at the moment. And Doherty has killed Richmond every friggin' year. And that
averages 110.1.
Yeah, ridiculous. Cade Simpson used to do it to us as well. So it's just one of those things. I know I go round 1 every year and watch Doherty absolutely smash us and go, okay, there's 130 points that he's just scored. He's a genuine round 1 VC option every year against us.
The issue is after that, though, he has probably quite low averages against, well, not low, but quite a lot of the other teams. I didn't actually realize. So in their fixture, get rid of Richmond, get rid of Geelong. So GWS, North, Adelaide. So 3 of the bottom 5. Saints, and then they've got West Coast to follow it up as well.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so as in it's a really good run to start that year for
And
sure.
that's what I'm saying, that the argument between him and Tommy Stewart, because of the start of the fixture, where if you look at Stewart's start, so I'm just getting this up here, not to turn the Carlton one into a Stewart, but he's got the couple of the 3 MCG games. So Collingwood, Carlton, round 4 is Hawthorn. So yes, we know he scores well at the G, but in that he's still got the Metricon game, which usually that time of the year is really slippery, and it makes it harder to get intercept marks. Then they travel over to West Coast, and then I think they finally get a game down against Sydney, in Geelong. So it's 6 or 7 rounds in before they're really playing down there. So I think potentially, and just a couple of those opponents, does the Stewart score as well? It is a really tough one, because
You're
there's
splitting hairs, right?
yeah,
Like
it is. You really are,
it's rough,
and
and you
maybe
can't.
sometimes I think
You can go
ownership too.
3.
Hmm.
Like you can go 3, but your whole team structure just fails, right?
Yeah,
Like
and I think it depends on Yo's and Himmelberg. If Himmelberg looks like he's playing forward and Yo has like an injury interruption, I think I just go those 3 and try to fit more rookies in.
there's also Bose, Hunter Clark's playing midfield. Like I mean,
Yeah,
there's a
Caulfield.
lot of
There's
good
a lot
options.
of options. Like
Jinby looks fantastic. Goda looks great.
there's a part of me that goes like you and just
Weddle.
put Himmelberg at
That's
D1 and just not have any
that's
of
what
it.
I'm like. Well, I'll
Yeah,
just wait for them to all drop to
all drop 550k.
550k.
So no, it's a fair argument. So
Yeah,
that's
I'm looking very heavily at a structure where I just go super light in the back because the rookies look great. The mid prices are fantastic. Yeah, like take advantage of it. Try and bleed it for as much as it's worth, and then you know that there's 4 or 5 guys that you can target all about 110, and they're going to be at some point you're going to get them for get one of them for 550 and another one for 550, and then hopefully so on and so forth. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting anyway. I
that's the
don't think there's really many other like
well, that's the
legitimate
premium
bona
stuff.
fide premiums right
That's the
now.
premium. So you're looking at more those breakout, draft kind of guys and that. And the next one I think is Chera. So they brought him over from Freo, gave up a lot to get him in. He had that 5-point game against the Bombers last year, which has obviously affected his average. So he's averaged 91 point for the year. But that I think the thing that we're really bullish on is that run home. Was at 170 averaged on those last sort of 6-7 games. So we know when he's in that midfield and he's up and running, he definitely has the potential to score. He's a young player.
Yeah. The
And
one thing with Chera that I've found though is that his CBA listing is literally as 4th. So he's just not in that top 3 echelon, and that's not changing. So without his role changing, we're just relying on natural progression for growth or the slight value that you have in that injury game, of course. So you probably do get he could probably average 100 quite easily, I'd say. But is that enough to select him as a standard option? Definitely not.
no.
The first half of the year, Chera's CBAs were a lot higher.
Yeah.
And I think once they started to lose and get challenged, he was actually the one that got kicked out.
But it's funny because at the end of the year, he was also back in there as well.
Yeah. It's
Yeah, when
funny
he was-
because
that's
he was
because
smashing it.
George Hewitt got injured, remember?
Yeah. So once Hewitt came
Oh, yeah.
out, I
Yeah,
think
then
it's
he was the next one in.
directly, the correlation between Hewitt playing and obviously where Chera then lines up.
Yeah. He caused
And
a lot
Kennedy
of
as well, I think, is meant to be. Is it Kennedy playing forward as well this year? I think
Yeah, I
Kennedy
think
lining up.
Well, Kennedy's injured at the moment, isn't he? He just
Yeah,
came back from
they've all
foot
got
surgery.
foot surgery. Yeah.
all of them have injuries down there. They're generally like a hospital ward. So like I like Chera as a draft option, but
Yeah.
I'm not. I think he's about rough. Like we all talk, they're all going up, all going up. Yeah, a little bit of natural progression in it, but not huge.
Didn't he average like 99 for the back end of the year before, and everyone thought he'd be averaging 100, but didn't
That's
average
right,
100?
because all the hype because he was moving clubs. So he's averaged 91 last year. I think at best maybe it's a 95. Like
I think he was about 95 the year before that, though.
So I think that's where he's at. I think he's that sort of player. He's that 9,500. He's got a hopper. Kind of that's what he does. He's not doing any. I don't think he's ever going to
I
be
think
100,
he could
510
be.
go.
I think in another team he would average a lot
Yeah.
more. I
Yeah.
think he's got the skill set to be able to average 110, but he doesn't have the role right now because you've got an absolute prodigy in Sam Walsh. You've got Patrick Cripps, who's arguably one of the best inside mids in the game, and George Shute, who's that complementer who can be that defensive side mid to allow Cripps to go and do whatever the hell he wants.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you've got to use Cripps in that role. And Cripps, you don't want to banged up defending people. Like, that's not how you want to play Cripps. And Chera's not that. He's an attacking mid. So, unfortunately, really, it's one of those other three guys has got to go out for him to be able to do that at Carlton.
I think it's just that thing that gives them that advantage. Like we talked about the Lions midfield and that, and they can compete with teams like that because they bat really deep. So I think he's a good player, but I think he's 9,500 guy. So yeah, good little draft option because some people would have forgot about him. That because obviously there was a lot more hype on him last year when he was moving clubs, but I'm not overspending for him in that sort of format.
Fair enough. What do you guys think of McGovern? Obviously, he only played the 7 games due to injury, but apparently, by all reports, is absolutely killing preseason. Do you think there's a little bit of meat on the bone there? Maybe for draft, I don't think it's 60. Like he's 338K. There's enough defensive players around that price that are going to average more and be more reliable on the park. So I'm not sure you can pick him in a standard, but I don't mind picking a Mitch McGovern in draft.
I think he burnt me last year. I don't think I can do it again.
I think
I didn't have him last year.
No, as an intercepting player, and also that I think they're quite liking the way the speed and accuracy in which he's actually kind of rebounding.
Yeah.
I think he can go 80 plus, but I think as far as draft leagues go, if it's 10 teams or under, I don't think you need him. As far as the 22,
pick him up on the waiver anyway.
as far as a 22 system, if I was playing like 12 teams where it gets a little bit more thin, then 100% I'm like, cool, I'll easily throw McGovern up on my bench and use him as my D5 if I need to. So I think it depends on how deep you are. I wouldn't be trying to jump too early, but if you're kind of in a 12 or more team, then I think definitely I'd be trying to hit McGovern up probably closer to that sort of 75 average because there's 7 points benefit there. I think you could get 80. So pick him up 7 points early, get yourself a nice little 5-point buffer.
The one that just because he missed all last year is Ed Kernell, how he fits back into the team because he was always that third midfielder for them, and now that Hewitt and Chera, because I know there's been a bit of talk about him. People are like, oh, he's going to be a real draft slider. I know, and we'll talk about that, like the injuries and stuff. But I think because of his age now, and he's not going to get his old role back. There's too many other, cooks in the kitchen. So I think people
who going to be sliding straight to the VFL. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I don't know if it's VFL, but I think I think they might have a potential other role. Like I think he probably does play VFL at points this year.
I'm calling foul play.
Why?
On what?
Well, I think they just wanted to go, hey, we'll give you another year and cut someone else, and then we'll split your salary and kind of split it across the salary cap. He's great depth.
Yeah, that's right.
I think he's exceptional depth. I think he's got a great wisdom and experience that he can pass off to other people. And if something happened, he could play a numerous amount of roles. But to cut some other players that are younger with possibly more upside.
He's 33, but I'm actually been surprised about. I've heard it in a lot of chats about people going, "Oh, yeah, just keep an eye out on Ed Kernell," and I'm not thinking why. It's not.
Now, there's another rookie here that I want to chat about because I want your opinion on it, guys. David Cunningham's been floating around in a lot of teams. So 163K forward mid. I'm of the opinion so risky. Elevated rookie price may come in and play early if Walsh doesn't get up for those couple of games. People have been saying that he's a half back or he plays on a wing or plays half forward. Realistically, the time that we've seen David Cunningham play good football, he's played on the ball. Now, he's not going to get that role at Carlton unless there's injuries.
They rate him internally huge. They always have, but his body just completely lets himself down. He's had a couple little stints there when he's got on the park and he's looked fantastic. but I know for sure that they really do rate him. And I've had him in and out of my side just because I know how much they rate him, and he'll obviously be starting round one. But his body's the problem. Like, can I trust him to get 4, 5, 6? Not even. I probably need him to play 8 weeks to get enough money out of him, and he's never strung it together.
And sub risk, right? Like, surely he's got the
Absolutely.
element of being the 23rd guy. Just his elevated price.
Mm.
You're supposed to pay that extra money for that security. That that they're best 22, you're not going to have that risk issue. Even if they only average 60, it doesn't matter because they're going to continue to churn over that cash.
So like what Bruce King, some of those other players around that point.
If
Bruce is playing, Bruce is going to be.
If we didn't have Bruce and King, then it'd be like David Cunningham in my side, because that's the first forward rookie I had in.
I prefer Richie Cunningham, Chris.
But he's
Hi, I'm Richie Cunningham, and this is my wife, Oprah. Austin Powers, don't worry.
So we mentioned the other two rookies at the start. Yeah, Hollins and Cowan. I think Cowan, it all on those injuries. If Hewitt and Walsh look out early and Doherty's playing in that midfield role, I think they start Cowan down there in the back line with Newman and Williams as the other two. And then the structure around the big guys, Wiedering, McGovern, and then it's the one out of Marchbank, Plowman, whichever way they want to go. Maybe one of the other tools down there. They've got a few guys who are very similar, so I think he's the one that gets a look in.
Anyone keen for Zach Williams in draft, boys?
I've got him here in my notes.
He's cheap.
He's
like, as in from a 77 average for a guy who's averaged 100 a couple times before. If he's finally pulling it together, I think there's definitely
it
value.
Probably is his year, because it's out of sight, out of mind.
And he's 28 years of age. I think apparently he's had a pretty good preseason as well. I'd be keen at a 77 average. I'd be keen to really pick him up at that sort of D5 even mark. I think he can go 90 if everything comes together. The problem is he's only played 55% of the last 3 years.
But this is the improvement that we're talking about. It's got to come from Williams. Jack Martin's another one. What's he priced at? Like 290. These are the guys that have to push them forward. Who just. It's not even a case of the Blues players ever, not being good enough. It's just that they can't get on these guys on the park for long enough for that. So Nick Newman's been another one down there. They always seem to they can't ever get their best 22 or even close to their best 22 out there. So I'm happy. I agree with you with Williams. It's a draft option. Yeah, I think it's fine. But again, body worries me. The scoring's not the problem. And it's just how much draft capital. If it's that fifth defender, sure, fourth. Like I'm willing to pay maybe in the early 80s for him, but I'm not reaching.
I'd go as far as 85, because if he puts it together, there's 5 to 10 points in it for you. And if he falters a little bit, I think he'll still get you around the 80. So I don't think you're going to lose too much. But I think it's that whole risk reward scenario. It depends on what's around that 85 mark. But if it starts to look thin at 85,
if it looks
there's not
thin,
much
it's
upside.
a different story. If it's not, it's
if it's not, you wouldn't go reaching for a short deal just to kind of pick up a few points. No, I feel you.
See, the one I prefer out of there, the two draft ones is I think Blake Acres. That is always pretty solid. So I don't mind looking at him as a later option. And I think Harry Mackay gets overlooked. As we said, we expect him to be better. What do you average the last couple of years?
79.
So he's averaged high 70s, but I think there's been some injured games there where he's probably should have gone early 80s. I think it might have been his true average might have been like 82, 83, something like that. So as a guy, if they're kicking the ball down to him more, you could see him going, 83, 84. I think a lot of people don't like taking key forwards twos. They'll look at the mid. So I think as maybe a F4, F5, he's not the worst option.
And the difference is Tom Lynch, and I hate to bring up a Richmond player for you, Swizz,
yeah.
But when he gets a hold of someone, he kicks it bag. He scores big, right? Mackay didn't have a single score over 125. Now, if he can actually try and get a hold of somebody and really put them to the sword with a few more higher ceiling games,
It's hard to
then
do when there's Kernow there too,
yeah, I know,
right?
I know,
So
I know, but
but I think if you look at his history, there's games where he kicked 10, right? Like he's got that ceiling in him, but he's no longer the primary focal target. Like that's Kernow now, So I don't think either of them are very good options in terms of a bona fide selection with both of them in the team. If one of them gets injured and goes out for a while, then absolutely jump on the other guy like straight away.
Yeah,
Like
but
if
I'm just
Kernow,
thinking it's more of like a draft option. I think
yeah,
it's not, those guys aren't sexy picks. So,
like any key forward though,
yeah.
Kernow 40% of his scores under 80,
Mm.
and Mackay 47% of his scores under 80. So when you're
And
playing draft leagues, it's like one in two, you're not getting an 80.
Yeah, they're the kind of guys I like to pick up later, and stream them along. And that especially if you're playing like a 10-team 4 forward line, like I'd be happy to get Mackay as my F4 and Kernow as my F5 kind of thing, or somebody else who's an F, that I can rotate, because when they have weaker opponents, that they can come out and score 110, 120. And if that's what your fourth forward's doing, fantastic.
Yeah, if you're bringing them off the bench, I like to try and loophole sometimes my
Yeah,
VC and
my
stuff and
forward,
keep
my
high bench
last couple
options.
forward line spots are always like that. I like to stream with my F4, F5, F6.
Interesting. What other draft relevance have we got?
No, that's about it, mate.
That's it. No Fisher, no DeConing,
nah.
no Sard. Wow, no one even mentioned Sard.
Mate, I think he had a career year last year. Like, where's the increase coming from?
He's averaged 100 before.
Yeah, but like you're not picking him in standard.
No. He'll
even
go
in draft-
quick. He'll go quick in draft too, but he's
He
not
averaged,
a guy that's going to slide.
but
He
even
did
in
have that
draft, he
middle-
averaged low the year before that. So I think it was last year. I thought Williams would have the rise because they were kind of like 50-50, and then Sard was the one that actually killed it. Now, if Williams goes up, I see Sard kind of coming back to the pack a little bit more.
Yeah, he had that middle period where he went 110, but like very consistent in there. But I don't see him just backing that up. Like, well, even if it is, he backs it up exactly where he's at. Yeah, draft. I'm not confident taking him compared to other players.
I'll let someone else pick him at a 103.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
that makes sense.
Yeah, as we said, we're not taking him in standard anyway because we've already talked about the three big boys. And if you're not going the three big boys, then you're looking at Double H or Dacos or even Brayshaw's cheaper than him. Like, there's just no reason.
No, I agree.
All right, that wraps us up for Carlton. Next off the bat will be Collingwood. I apologize in advance for Chris, and we'll catch you next time. Thank you very much.
See you guys.
Bye.